Me cry.
Is that what you know?
Yeah, it is pretty much.
Today we have our dear friend Frank Diaz, who was also can be found in this book.
No, he can't be found in that book.
In the other one?
No, he can be found in this book.
Ooh, look at Andy's lifting up a book. Lift up
Yes,
a book.
Pride and Joy. Frank Diaz is in this book. Yes, he is.
Chapter 10.
Do you know which chapter?
No.
You've read it enough times. You should know.
And we're going to talk about his love-hate relationship with Facebook.
We're going to talk about that and a whole lot more on A Wonderful Chaos. We fight to find peace. Head and a heart like a nephew and niece.
I don't know the lyrics.
You know what? When he came and sent me the lyric like a nephew and a niece, he sent me these lyrics and I'm like, I have no clue what you mean when you say nephew and niece. And then I was going to start to rewrite the lyric. And I said, the fact that I don't know what it is only adds to the wonder. So I left that in the
wonder. It's going to be a new thing on every episode. We're going to talk about the wonder.
The wonder. Frank Diaz. It is so fun to have Frank on the show because, like, let's be honest, Frank doesn't need to do a show like this.
No.
He's a professor at Indiana University.
He's just here because of us.
He's here because of us. He's a Zen Buddhist teacher ordained 6 years ago. He's really leading the way for mindfulness in music. So he is really, I would say, the pioneer in an area which is only now becoming more recognized throughout the world.
Yeah.
And he was doing it when everyone was like, what the hell is this? And why are you doing it? And now it's like he's the go-to man for music and mindfulness in university level.
Music and mindfulness.
Yeah.
Yeah. And he also, in the chapter of the book, he let you teach his class.
Yeah.
Like you guys met and he was like, hey, you're a Buddhist.
Yeah, that's what he said. Yeah.
And you said?
I guess so. I had to understand what he meant by it. But in time, I learned that the way that I navigate life is loving detachment, which is not like a mental construct. It's loving it, but also allowing it just to be as it is. So not holding on to it and trying to control it. And I don't know, he might elaborate on that and correct it, but that's what I took away from his reflection back to me. And I said, yeah, I completely feel that. So, yeah.
Yeah. And he actually, for this show, he promised to give us a twist. I'm really wanting to bring him on, actually.
Yeah. So let's bring him on. Mr. Frank Diaz.
Hey.
Hey.
It's great to be here.
Thank you for sullying your name by joining us.
Hey, listen, I'm always for sale.
You know, just to set up the show, if I may, just to give more context. So I love seeing Frank on Facebook. And during the political upheaval in America last year, Frank was starting to make comments online. And whenever I see comments being made online, I got like two parts of my mind go off. One is, go for it, Frank. And the other is, oh, fuck, I don't want to be part of the aftermath. So there's these polarities, like totally fighting with like, go for it, Frank, fight the good fight. And then, oh, Jesus, now the
backlash.
The backlash.
Yeah.
And so I saw this going on, and I have to say I projected onto you, Frank. No, so like, not in like the negative, like I thought, Frank, what are you doing to yourself? That's what I'm saying over here. Like, you don't need this shit in your life. This is my narrative. And then I'm like, you don't need this shit in your life. You don't need it. And then, of course, about 2 weeks, 3 weeks after all of a sudden he just says, guys, I've had enough. And then he leaves Facebook. And then a few months later, he comes back on. And that was when I reached out to him and said, Frank, are you willing to come on to do a show, My Love-Hate Relationship with Facebook?
Frank.
Yeah.
Frank. 6 months. I think I was off for like 6 months.
You were off for 6 months.
And I mean, gone. Like I completely destroyed my account. Actually, I archived it because I'm vain, but I destroyed it. Yeah, that's me right there. Yeah.
I just sent you a friend request. I want to see when people are troublemakers.
Yeah. I want to know, like, take me back to the moment before you left. Like, help me understand what was going on in your mind and what was the thing that said, okay, this is it, I'm leaving. Like, give me a.
Oh man! First of all, I think again, thanks for having me on the show, and gosh, I look beautifully tanned this morning. I love that. It's fantastic. And as a super white Cuban, looking tanned in any moment is like, it's such a pleasure. It's such a gift. So I think we talked about it a little bit afterwards, but what happened is, I wake up in the morning and. Of course, COVID's going on all over the world. Yeah, it's a big concern. Things are serious, and I find out that Donald Trump has COVID. Right, Donald Trump has COVID, and I think it was early enough in the morning that my rational mind hadn't kicked in, and the first thing I thought was, man, that sucks, right? Like, and I was surprised by that reaction. I was like, wait, shouldn't I be like, yeah, you, Baba, I can't believe you. Of course, you got COVID. But I was really sad because I just don't want anybody to get COVID. I mean, I don't care if the guy did all the things. I mean, I do care, but I was like, So I went online and I'm watching people post just like, you deserve it. You're a terrible human. This is what you get. And I'm like, I'm not feeling that way. And because I have been taught, I grew up in a family where you didn't hide your emotions or your thought. You just talked, right? And I don't know if it's a Cuban culture thing, but it's my dad. Maybe my dad was a political prisoner in Cuba. So when he was released, right? Like, I was a young kid, and one of the things we did was, or one of the things he valued was just being open. Like, you just talk, and if you argue, that's fine. Your point, your existence does not, you don't have to agree with everybody all the time. So I had disagreements as a kid about politics and everything, and then we'd be like, cool, man, let's go do whatever, right? It wasn't a big deal. Well, now, disagreement means like shunning, right? Like, you can't talk. So I got online and I'm like, oh, I don't wish COVID on anybody. This is terrible, including the president. And the minute I posted it, because I wanted to just post an opposite opinion. Oh man, it was brutal. I had some people that were like, yeah, well, thanks for being, kind and being consistent, right? And then some people I really love were like, no, I don't agree with you at all, and this is ridiculous, and he deserves it. And I'm looking at this thing, and my inner narrative is exactly what Andy says. Like, why am I doing this? Like, how is this in any way shaping, helping me, other people? And I mean, that was the strong narrative. Another side of me was like, no, damn it. If people are going to go out there and say what they're going to say, then, I get to say it too. Why am I any different? So at that particular moment in my life, I just thought, I'm spending too much time on this stupid thing. I'm arguing with people. It's not going to make a difference. People know who I am. If you know me, you know me, and if you like me, you like me. And that's just life, right? It's also a really privileged position to be in, right? Because tenured professor, steady job. I don't have to worry so much about, pushing buttons. So I just decided that day, I'm done. I put a little post up. I am done. And, in the past, I have deactivated my account, but come back. This was canceling my account. Like, Facebook was ominous. You will lose all these friends and all these pictures and contacts. I'm like, yeah, it's cool. Kill me right now.
Wow. Your online identity is
swiped. Right?
Before you did that, Frank, how many people unfriended you?
I don't ever look. I really don't. I don't count my friends. I knew at that point that I was reaching the limit of how many friends you could have. And I'll talk about that later if we get to it. Like, Facebook is like an extended mind for me. And that's actually one of the positives of it. And I'll talk about that later if you want to talk about it. But
yeah,
it was like, man, I've been unfriended before, but usually I'm the one to unfriend someone after they've just been nasty. Like, I have a high threshold, Me too. And I'm like, all right, yeah. So at that point, I just left, and I think now recovering that a lot of people thought I unfriended them, because they don't, they're like, oh, Frank, I started I started rebuild my friends list, trying to remember who was on this thing, and some people like won't friend me because they're like, no, you unfriended me. No, I didn't. I unfriended the whole universe.
So people didn't realize, of course, because no one's just following me. They didn't realize that you just left and came back as opposed to just unfriended them.
Yeah, and they got messages like, "Is this the real Frank Diaz?" I'm like, "Yeah, this is me, buddy."
Did I write that to you or not? I don't even remember.
You did. I sent that to you. You're like, "I thought we were already friends." It's and some people are like, anyway, I have really good friends who are like, wait, like, did you unfriend me and friend me back? Did I do something? Like, no, it's a really simple explanation. Occam's razor here. I just eliminated the whole thing.
Yeah.
For 6 months. So basically what to answer your question is my state of mind was I don't need this and I'm not sure what this is doing and it's not making me feel good right now. I'm not learning anything positive that I can't learn by not being on Facebook. So I got rid of it and then I switched over to Twitter and that's a totally different thing in a different world. And now it's kind of reversed, I'm back on Facebook.
And I want to know, like, if you had to describe your life after Facebook, how did it change?
Oh man, God. So it's almost like at first it's like leaving coffee. It's like you're a caffeine high and you're like, oh, I'm not drinking coffee anymore. I think the first few days were super hard. Like all of the habits are there, like pick up your phone and like click on something. You could tell that I've been conditioned by this app, right? Like I decided to be conditioned. I would have an idea and I want to discuss it with somebody. And of course, I'm married. I have a kid. They don't want to hear my ideas anymore. I mean, why would they, So I'm like, who am I going to talk to? Who am I going to discuss this with? Well, I don't have anybody. So it was like, it started to crash a little bit. And then I felt horrible. Then I felt disconnected. And then like 3 days later, it's like going to retreat. I was like, I have all this time now because I'm not concerned about these things. Right. So here are some ways my life changed. One is I started reading a lot more. Started watching movies. My thoughts got clearer. It's strange. Like I felt like there was less contamination. Like I didn't, and I felt in many ways like I was. You know what it felt like? It felt like somebody had taken me out of like I'm a plant, and somebody took me out of a garden full of weeds and planted me in another place, and so I was able to regrow. And their weeds are coming. The weeds are coming and they're my friends and all that. But I felt like I could grow without the influence of other things around me. And, but then in the end, it was not good. I started to get really lonely. And that's kind of why I came back on, it was, it was the right thing to do at that point in my life.
You start to get lonely.
Yeah. Let's look at our lives right now, right? All of us are hyper connected. I mean, anybody who participates in the social media world or anybody who has to participate in the social media world because of their job or because of their calling, right? If you're a photographer, it helps to have social media. If you are a writer, it helps to have social media, right? That's how you make contacts. That's how you exist in people's worlds now, right? They forget you if you're not on there unless you're like some, you got to be like Noam Chomsky or something.
Stephen King.
Yeah, right. Like, like I know Jimmy Carter exists. I don't need to find him on Facebook, But Frank Diaz, he's maybe a cool dude to some people who are into whatever I'm into. But if I'm not there showing up on their feed, I stop existing and they stop communicating with me. And so as less and less people communicated with me, I started to feel this like very instinctual social animal urge. Which is, if you look at any of the developmental psychology or if you just search yourself, we're social animals, right? Like we like to be in packs and we organize ourselves this way. And that started to, because I didn't have contacts with my extended group of friends and it started to feel really lonely and I started to get sad. And what really triggered it, man, I'll tell you, this was an emotional thing. I was asked to present for a conference, American String Teachers Association. And, I was like, great, put the conference together. And I showed up and, and I'm on Zoom and I see all these people who I haven't seen in like 6 months on Facebook, who I love, like who are my friends. And they're like, hey, Frank, it's so great to see you, and it was like, welcome back, Cotter. I mean, it was like, oh man, this is great. Like there should have been like a beautiful theme song. Reunited and
we feel so good.
And I was like, what? Why? This is what I'm missing. I'm missing seeing my friend Suhan and his new job because I'm wired in a way where I don't know where this comes from. I don't know if it's my mom or my dad's influence. I really enjoy when people have successes in their lives. I know it sounds trite and weird and like I'm putting myself up, but I'm not. When other people succeed and they're my friends, I feel really good. I'm like, yeah, Andy's got this new book, man. This is great. Like, go Andy. I don't feel like, why don't I have a book?
Yeah.
Although sometimes I do feel like, why don't I have a book? But
Yeah, of course. You do have a book, don't you?
no, I have like 8 books that I'm writing, and none of them are ever going to get written,
Okay.
or they will someday. They'll spring forth. So loneliness is what started, and connection is what said, okay, that's what urged me to try to come back on.
Mm.
So that's where I'm back. I'm like, okay, but now again, I'm
okay, now that look, I want to ask about that look. So you have a question in there, Bum? I don't want to
continue.
So you go away. You go into the desert. You're Jesus in the desert, and then you say, "Okay, I'm coming back into the village."
Yes.
Now you've come back in. You've learned a lot from being out in the desert. So the question I have for you is, what do you not do when you came back into the village? Or what did you, like, where have you stepped in the same pile of shit that you did before, if at all?
Yeah. So well, karma is powerful, right? So I like to use the sort of Buddhist philosophy interpretation of karma, which is psychological habits, right? Well, there's a way that we talk about karma, about being habits of mind, of how we interact with the world. And, you can't uproot them all. They're always going to be there. It's like you can reshift them, you can repurpose them. And my karma is to sort of do some of the things I've done before, is sort of like, habitually and subliminally. Like, so here's some things. At first I was like, just like, hey, here's a picture. Look, I'm in Oregon. Yay. Isn't this pretty? Yeah. A pretty picture. And then it became like, man, I've got to make a comment about this, because if I don't, like, the world will not know my opinion. Like, like there's some stupid part of me is like, people need to know what Frank
People need to know what I feel on this subject.
Well, I know how ridiculous that sounds, but I'm just being honest. I'm like, I gotta post this. This is a really good opinion that people should hear. And so that's where I get in trouble, is that I will post things, and I feel like there's opinions about things. It could be politics, it could be religion, it could be life, or whatever. And I feel like there's a lot of different ways you can relate to this. And by the way, I want to be clear, like, social media to me is not inherently good or inherently bad. There's no inherentness there. It's like anything else. It's how it combines in certain situations with certain people and personalities, and what it produces. It's kind of like an emergent phenomenon, right? Like whatever happens. And it's good for some people, bad for others. So the mistake I make is that I do that, right? And what I really should do is just decide, I'm going to post this, and I'm okay with whatever the consequences are.
Yeah.
I'm so brave. I'm so individualistic, right? But the minute I post it, it's like, yeah. And then I'm like, oh man. Ooh, like, is that really what I think? I've already changed my mind.
Yeah.
And then I'm like, oh, what are people responding to? Oh gosh, okay, everybody's okay. But here's the one that kills me, right? Like, I start imagining responses. Yeah. Like I'm so important that everybody out there's like, what does Frank think about the situation in Cuba? Like some people care, but maybe other people don't care. And I'm like, oh man, like, what are these people thinking? And then those things become real in my head. Like, I feel like there are people sitting in some space somewhere judging my answers and me. And so, of course, what I want to do there is engage them, right? I'm like, oh, let's talk about it. But, it's social media. Nobody has to engage with you, right? Yeah. So then it's like, oh, then there's like regret. Oh, why did I post? And then indifference, like, whatever. And then the final one, like, defiance, like, well, that's what I wanted to post anyway. Yeah. So again, I'm falling into this trap of not knowing clearly what my intention is when I post something.
Yeah.
And being okay with the consequences, right? Like, I just need to be okay when I post something, because it doesn't matter what the hell you post, to be honest. I mean, there are consequences one way or the other, positive and negative. Yeah. I mean, there's no right way to post on Facebook. I hate that idea. And I have people who are so self-righteous about this. I got a buddy who I love, dear friend, who's like, yeah, I don't do social media. And I'm like, oh, wow. Like, you're just above it all, like, yeah. What an enlightened master you are. So I'm not that guy. I get it. Like, some people are, look at my cat. Cool, man. Your cat's awesome, And other people are like, listen to my diatribe. I've got this thing I've got to say, right? Yeah. So, that's the thing. I wish I did it with more intentionality, and I started that way, but I'm already gone. I'm already like kicking back. Just
I mean,
Do you see my face?
no, I didn't see your face. I was looking at his face, unfortunately.
I saw Bambos wants to
Help me, Frank. If you see the face, then point it out. Say, Andy, Bambos wants to ask a question.
No, I couldn't handle it. I just knocked you like this.
Yeah.
It's really emotional to me. Like there has been a time in my life to end Facebook, and I do see that those are the moments when I allow the app to use me instead of me using the app.
Yep.
Mhm.
And I actually have to put a timer on. Like I'll make a strict agreement for like a few weeks. And okay, this part of the day is Facebook. I'm going to post some stuff and off. You're not going to go back and look at comments. You're not going to. So I have to have certain things in the go so that I don't get taken by the wave.
Yeah. Yeah.
And like really using it intentionally, because the idea of deleting it and losing touch with family and I spent the whole COVID deleting over 1,500 people, and now I now actually can see the newsfeed of friends.
Right.
That's really a big one, also.
Yeah.
And yeah, I use it for business.
Of course. Yeah.
In a big freaking way.
Yeah. And Bombos for business now. I mean, I don't do what you guys do, where you're living outside of academia and you're working in a different world than I am. But even when I do things like mindfulness workshops, right? I have to cultivate a particular personality for certain people who are my friends, who are like, well, if I'm going to go do mindfulness with this guy, then he should be a person that kind of in some ways reflects that. And I have to fight that because, of course, nobody is their job, right? Like that's part of who we are. So how do you balance somebody who wants to be your friend on there and wants to know a little bit more about you, but also you don't want to get so far that they're like, well, that's not the person I thought they were.
Yeah.
And so for some people that could be a loss of business, right?
Yeah.
Or for other people, it could also be, wow, that's a really authentic human being and I want to connect with them, right? And both things can be true. But what you said that I find fascinating, and I actually wrote it in my notes before the show, is it's exactly what you said. I don't want the app to use me. I want to use the app. And what we forget is that, I forget, is that the people who run Facebook and Twitter and Instagram are spending millions of dollars with consultants, psychologists, advertisers who understand how to get us hooked on things.
Yeah.
And
I call them Satan's little helpers.
I mean, right? Yeah. And I feel like, I'm sophisticated enough. I'm not going to get caught in that. But the reality is I'm outmanned. I mean, they're so good at it.
So good.
Did you guys see The Social Dilemma? Have you seen that movie?
No.
Yeah, Bambos, don't see it.
Oh man,
Painful.
I watched that movie about 2 days before I went offline also. And as I'm watching this, I'm like, oh yeah, this is even deeper than I thought. Like, holy crap, the manipulation, the timing, like the variables that they use. Yeah. So anyway, that I just want to say that I totally feel you there and understand that particular perspective. But I'm wondering, Bombos, like you're if I remember correctly for you, your photography, the things that you do as a photographer, as an artist, are very much about authenticity.
Yeah.
And I think that's your angle, but it's also who you are, right? That's a thing for you. So I'm curious, when you say that, do you ever feel like, okay, I need to be authentically who I am on Facebook, both as a business person and as a sort of just everyday human being? Do those two things coincide for you? Are they consistent?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
I'll go for periods without posting for two reasons. Or I'm really busy, or I don't have anything to say.
Yeah. Oh, I wish I had that. I wish I'd never had something to say about something.
But when we talk about, in quotes, good and bad, like it has to do with intention.
Yeah.
And sometimes I'll go on Facebook, like especially during COVID, I was just needing love. I needed like a hug.
Yeah.
I needed some kind of human interaction. Where in the past, if I needed that, I'll go out in a cafe, I'll start talking to people, get a hug from a stranger. And now that shit wasn't there. So in a way, Facebook was a blessing and a curse, because World War II, people didn't have, like, there was war, you're cut off from the world, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And in these times, we actually stayed connected and we could share what was happening for us, how we're feeling, how we're experiencing the world.
Yeah.
Um,
I missed that too. That's what I meant partially by lonely. And by the way, let me just be clear. Like I have in many ways a charmed life. Like I'm not, I have a wonderful family and I have a good core of friends here. Like what am I bitching about? I shouldn't be. But the reality is for me personally, I need a bigger field of people. It's just how I'm wired, and how I've been conditioned and I enjoy people. I honestly enjoy being around people. I can't do it all the time. I need my quiet time. I need to unwind. But like, if you put me in a group of people after the initial sort of weirdness, I just love being around people and hearing what they got to say and conversing with them. And I love that you said, I love the vulnerability of saying you needed love. So did I. Like, in this field, like academia, like if you do one good thing, nobody knows. It goes on a CV. It's nice on occasion to get a buddy to be like, hey, Frank, congratulations, man. That's great. And hey, I miss you. You're a buddy and I miss you. And then I'm like, oh yeah, I'm human. Right. And what a blessing to have Facebook in that way, or Facebook. Twitter and Instagram are different beasts, I think, during the pandemic, because it really did do that. At least for me afterwards, after I went through that 6-month period as Jesus in the desert. that analogy, man. I could see my parish priest being like, Frank is nothing like Jesus and will never be like.
So Frank, because you're Buddhist and I'm projecting enlightenment on you.
Nice.
I'm projecting it back, man. Yeah.
I could put a halo around my head here now as well.
Yeah. So you've written a post, and you're about to click send. Are you also present, like helicopter view, looking at yourself and tuning into, okay, I'm going to push the button. What do I want out of this?
Yeah.
Like, what is really the intention? And
yeah. When I'm practicing what I'm supposed to practice, that's what happens. Right. So, my particular affinity or lineage in Buddhism is the Soto Rinzai school of Dogen, which is a particular Buddhist teacher. And Dogen's thing was like, look, the point of Buddhist practice is being aware, just being like, that's the fundamental thing. Like whenever you do something, just be aware of what's going on, and that implies a certain level of what, like, okay, stop, pause. And now check your intention. It doesn't mean necessarily knowledge of everything, but at least you know why you're doing something. So, that's the ongoing practice that Dogen talks about. And when I am doing that, that's exactly what happens. When I'm not doing that, the opposite happens, which is I just post. And sometimes I'm lucky and it's a good post and it gives me what I need, whatever it is that I need that I can't articulate at that moment. But more often than not, when I post without being aware, that's usually what happens. And that's a good, right. That can be transferred to lots of things in our lives, right? How we speak to people, and anyway, it's interesting to me. I gave a talk yesterday about this Dogen guy, and I talked about this one thing. He has this writing called Shobogenzo, which is his collection of works. But Genjo Koan is a particular writing for lay people. So it's Dogen the monk talking to lay practitioners that were interested in him. And one of the things he said in there that I think really applies is there's this section of it that says, the Buddhist path or Buddhist practice is about studying the self, right? So you're always trying to be aware of yourself. Yourself is the locus of all activity that you can ever experience, right? So then it says to study the self is to forget the self. What the heck does that mean? Well, to forget the self means to be open to different possibilities so that you're not stuck in one area and going, oh, I get it. No, look at all this other stuff that's going on here that you're not taking account of, or all the different perspectives that you might have even within yourself, right? And then finally, the last one is, no matter what's going on, right? You're always being actualized by many things. So in that self, everything is included. Your thoughts, your perceptions, your relationships, social media, and whatever that does for you, right? All of that is in there. And so what he's saying again is to just I like the second one is forget the self for a minute, forget what you think is happening here, and open yourself up and go, okay, what do I want here? Where's my intention and where's this leading? could this possibly lead, right? And so in that way, I think it relates.
Nice.
You guys were giggling. I wonder if there's something fun in the chat.
Well, I guess I was giggling because as you were speaking, I completely forgot what I wanted to say. Do you know the group hashtag and it's fucking great?
Yeah, I'm on there. Yeah.
So I never see you comment anything, but what I want to say to you is I use it as a tool. Like sometimes if I want to do something and I'm not allowing myself to do it, I'll go on there and I'll be like, I want to do this and it's fucking great. Or I just posted this and it's fucking great.
Yeah. I use that tool mentally and I teach it to people. I stole it from Andy. I tell them it's Andy's tool.
Nice.
Yeah.
Thank you for that.
Actually, it's not.
It's not, but that's okay.
It's
man.
It's Peter Koenig. It's Peter Koenig's tool, which I adopted and modulated, but it's really his tool. And he probably stole it from somebody else, as we all know. This stuff is never made.
It's acknowledged in the book. So,
Bola Long, who we all know from South Africa, he is one of the biggest provocateurs I know on social media. So, if anyone who likes to watch people set fires in trash cans and leave, then go to Bola Long and enjoy his feed. Because what Bola Long does is he basically finds a lot of individuals who are usually very caught up in religion, and then he poses questions which religion has a very hard time answering, and then he lets people defend themselves. And then it becomes this beautiful menagerie of chaos.
I mean, you can tell from his profile picture that he's a troublemaker.
With both arms crossed, like you don't fuck with me. So he says, and no big surprise, I've never regretted what I've posted on social media. That was on my mind then. And I see, and there's an interesting thing. I think that's very interesting is that when I believe that we create through our post and how we show ourselves to the world, a certain persona.
Yep.
And so some people can get away with being the provocateur because people project onto them. That's who they are.
Yep.
And then others who are maybe showing baby pictures one day and then the next day saying, I hate this political figure. Those people tend to be like, they grate on people because on one level, it's almost like they feel people sort of, they judge that behavior more, at least what I've noticed. So with Bola Long, I think it works to his personality type and how he's created his friend group. But I believe other people couldn't get away with it.
That's excellent. And I think it's an excellent point. And that's part of it. I actually fall more into the second category, which is, I'm a complex person like anybody else. I'm not one thing, and we have this bizarre idea that we have to be one thing. That we're this continuous self that is the same in every situation, which is just not true. Now, you can cultivate an aspect of yourself and you can use that aspect of yourself to interact with the rest of the world. And there's aspects of yourself that you don't use to interact with the rest of the world, right? But we're these complex creatures. And, I've been the provocateur. Actually, there's an element of me that's very provocateur-ish.
Yeah.
And actually, I've had to really tamp it down because, and here's why, it's a very interesting dilemma. The provocateur for me when I was younger really kind of gave me an identity among a crowd of people that in my field are very like, yes, rules, this is the way things are, and very this is the process and this is the right way to do it and this is the right way to do a thing. And that wasn't my thing. So I poked. And there were people who wanted to be that person who were like, yeah, Frank, poke, piss him off, And at some point I realized, like, wait a minute, that's not everything I am. I'm also like a nice guy, who cares about people and doesn't want to hurt their feelings. And, and so you get stuck in those roles and then that doesn't let you grow and doesn't let you explore other sides of yourself. And one of the bad parts about social media, and I find this is one of the hardest things for me to do, is to friend somebody who knew me 20 years ago. And now I'm a grown-ass man, with kids in a different world. And by the way, I have to think about that, right? Because it's not just about me anymore. When I post something and it affects me, it also affects my wife and my kid.
Wow.
Right? Like, people are like, why don't you just say what you think? Here's why, dude. Because I have a salary. And at some point, if I lose that salary, it's not just me. It's my kid who suffers. Yeah. And why does that matter so much? Well, because I grew up dirt poor. I'm an immigrant from Cuba that showed up here when I was 6 years old with a family that didn't speak English, who had to climb and climb and climb to get to a regular sort of standard privileged American life. And you
Mhm.
know what? I'm not gonna deny that that's nice, and I don't want my kid to go through that shit.
Yeah.
You know, so I'm gonna be less risky now that I'm not just responsible for me. I'm responsible for a lot of other people, right?
Yeah.
So that's a
That's really
tough balance.
beautiful.
Yeah, you know, it's not just about me. So yeah, the provocateur. Listen, I get it. I love that. But
I mean, we're talking about identity here,
sure, yeah,
and what part of you actually needs to express.
Yeah,
yeah.
I wanted to get to that point. Okay. So now I want to go back to a question Bambos asked you. Bambos asked you, and I wanted to go one step deeper into a
Yeah.
question you asked
Go
earlier.
on.
When you're about to post,
Yeah.
I have so when I read your post, let me share with you how it processes in me.
Yeah.
That's one of the 100 voices I hear in my head is articulated in your post.
Yeah.
And then I realized when I hear that voice in my head that could also write the post, I also see, oh, if the context of the reader is here, then I understand that they'll get it. If the context of the reader is here, I know that. So I already know that it's 100%. Like it's like there's no experiment in it. It's just.
So you're saying that you already know what the reactions are.
Oh, for sure,
Yeah.
because I know from the when Frank said Dogen. Consciousness of consciousness, right? Which is basically, are we aware of our own selves? I already can tell you several people in my feed are not aware of that. So if I send out a post and I know from their responses and their reactions in the past, they're not showing self-awareness, I already can predict with a high degree of certainty how they're going to react to a post. Yeah. So I'm thinking to myself before sending it, why would I send this out? Because I don't see it serving them. In my, it could be arrogant by stating that, but I'm going to say that, or me, because I don't want to go through my coaching practice of having to spend time and energy on somebody who's not paying me.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting.
And so that's the process that goes on. And then I have the thought, it goes and I don't send it. So I'm always wondering, I've always thought in your case, what would make that you don't go through that same process?
No, I go through, there's aspects of that process that I go through, but I think here's maybe a different thing for me. At some point, you come to a realization in your life that no matter what you do, there's like streams of consequences, right? Like people are going to be like, yeah, some people, by the way, sometimes you'll post something like that and they'll be like, that's an interesting idea. I've never thought of that before.
Sure.
Right? And I never know who that person's going to be. Well, let me be clear. There are some people, it's never going to be them. You're like, that person is never going to look at anything that I post and like get a new idea, right? Because that's just not how they're built. And then there's some people are like, oh, whatever Frank says is cool, fine. Most people are in the middle, like, hey, I get that. That's interesting. I'll say this, Andy, one of the reasons I post that stuff and I don't think about it that way is because the way that my career and my life are right now and the way that my relationships are all much more intertwined and holistic. My fundamental orientation to life, the way that I look at life, is in many ways already reflected in how I teach, how I work with people, how I make music, how I have friendships. So it comes from a particular core of a way of thinking, and it might be expressed through Dogen. I might talk about Dogen. I have a colleague, Peter Mix, actually, who I work with at IU, who every time I bring up Dogen, he just kind of smirks and he says, oh, the guy from Lost, like, in that series Lost, like that guy who was in the temple, like 10 years ago, I would have laughed. I would have been like offended, like, whoa, no, he's a serious philosopher. I'm like, yeah. Pete's not going to dig Dogen. That's cool. He's still my friend. He's not, yeah. Other people will be like, hey, who's this monk? Who the hell's this guy, man? That's kind of cool, right? That relates to me individually. So I will post it because I don't often know exactly what's going to happen in that middle area. And sometimes what happens that's really cool is that people will respond and say something to me. I'm like, I never thought about that. That's cool. That's when Facebook is working really well, right? Yeah. But you got to curate that space because we all know what you get on that feed is like everything, right? So sometimes by trying to weed off our Facebook feed, we lose the flowers. We lose the beautiful flower that can grow, right? Like every garden is constant weeds and flowers, weeds and flowers. And, we have this thing to pull out all the weeds, but if you pull everything out, just to get beautiful flowers, that soil isn't as healthy. Things aren't working in there. And so to me, sometimes you post and you might get a bunch of weeds and one really cool flower. And you're like, hey, this is a nice flower. I'm going to take that, right? Or I'm going to make a nice offering. and sometimes it's just weeds. I try to avoid getting a bunch of weeds because it isn't worth it, but I don't want to give up the flowers for the weeds in those situations.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
I think it's also contextual what you both shared, in a way that if you're going to post something, or at least I've experienced that if I post something and it wasn't fully, like I wasn't standing fully behind it or something, it wasn't congruent, I'll see it's going to occupy a part of my brain, and better I go back and delete it because I need that space. But if I post it as a way of, okay, I'm letting go of this. It's like this show. It's going to impact people, and some people it's going to be like, yes, it makes a difference, and others is a no.
Yeah,
you can't control that.
Yeah,
I like
so
what it is true. You're right. Because when we do this hour-long show, we're no different than posting something on Facebook. Actually, yeah,
that's exactly what I was going to say. Is that we're creating a sort of fixed timeline of things that you can go. It's a curated self, and that's not how selves actually work, right? Like we try to present it that way, but they're more complex, right? We're creating a narrative through shows, through posts, etc. And what's scary about it is that once you no longer stand by that narrative, then now that's already in there. So how do you contextualize that? And what Babo said is actually one of my least favorite things about Facebook is that when I post something, there are times where I post it to just get it off my chest. It's like, it's out there now. Everybody needs to know it. And actually that's okay. That might have whatever reaction. I'm not worried. But sometimes I post it, and what I do is I'm thinking it occupies space in my mind in a way that I don't want it to occupy space, because now I have to worry about, wait, was I fully committed to that? Do I want to respond to this person? If I don't respond, am I being a jerk? If I do respond, am I just continuing something that isn't going
it's controlling you.
It's controlling you.
Yeah, right. And it's 50% of my mental space. And at that moment, I just don't want to do that. Right? And so that happens at times. It doesn't always happen, but it does happen at times. That's one of the risks that we take by posting anything. On the other hand, again, we go back to a point. I'll go back to a point I made before, which is, but sometimes you don't know how that post is going to manifest out in the social world and what it's going to make a difference for. And I'll just say this honestly. Over the last, I don't know how long I've had Facebook now, 13, 14 years. I will occasionally get a Facebook message from somebody that'll say something like, hey, I really appreciate that you posted that. This really validated something on the timeline. And I appreciate you for saying that. And when we get those, I'm like, I'll tell you one that really, really strikes hard. And I talk about my identity as a Latino guy, and that has impacted me as a professional and in my life, how I see things differently, because I grew up very differently. A lot of the people I work with and I'm around. And, some people are like, oh, I get it, Frank, you're Latinx, blah, blah, blah. Okay, great. That's fine. You're not special. Fine. I'm not saying that. But, I got friends and students who are like, that's their identity too. And they look at that and they're like, hey, thanks for sharing that. I don't often get to share that with people. I relate to that really well. And so, man, that's cool, right? But I don't know when I post that's going to happen. Sometimes I'm in Bumble's mind frame where I'm like, wait, what are people going to say? And it often pleasantly surprises me. Also, my wife is so good at contextualizing. She'll be like, Frank, 90 people liked your post and one person complained. And you're worried about the person that complained. I'm like, yeah, you're right. I'm like stuck on that one person, like, oh crap, what did I do? Is this going to get back to my dean somehow?
Yeah. Yeah, we've discussed, because I was laughing and we were thinking about this. Your show, what, 235? That's 235 hours. And we were realizing, plus. And we were talking about it, like, if anyone wanted to make us look like shit, they could piece together however many portions they would want to, and all of a sudden we could look like the biggest jerks imaginable.
And that would be okay.
Yeah,
that would be okay. Yeah. In some ways, that's fine. And and then for someone like me, where I'm thinking about the world that I coexist in, that could actually be damaging to my career. So it's always a risk, right? People can take what you say now online and piece it together. I was telling somebody, like, I always fight with my privilege and also dislike of academia. Like, I know it's a privileged position, but there are aspects about it that I really dislike. And I think sometimes, what would happen if I left? Or what if I went into administration or something like that? Well, you imagine like me applying for like a dean's position somewhere, and then somebody going back and being like, oh, in episode 19 of A Wonderful Chaos, Frank had a stream of profanities and said something, and now we're going to put them in front of these children.
Yeah.
It might not happen, but it might, right? So that's gone. There's nothing I can do about it. So at some point, you're just like, this is the world we live in now, and you're not going to find a perfect person that hasn't said something or done something that's might offend somebody or might make it seem like you're out of character.
Yeah.
Opposite of that is to live a really reserved life that's very controlled and compacted and career based, which I can't do. I'm willing to take the consequences of being an asshole sometimes.
Yeah.
I just can't do that other life, man. It's not worth it. I don't care what I just can't do it.
Yeah.
A dear friend of mine, Frank, he also deleted Facebook, but he's let's say a diplomat. He posts some things about Israel. He goes to Israel and they interrogate him for 4 hours. They knew the names of his kids. They knew everything about his life and about his posts. So when he came back, he was like, I'm out. So now he only used LinkedIn.
Man, but you just like pinpointed one of my like deepest fears, right?
Deep state.
Yeah, no, hey, listen, I know that's going on. Like, I know that we're being monitored. And when you say certain things, especially if you're a diplomat or, for me, nobody cares what Frank Diaz says. Not yet. But if I'm in a position where I have influence over a lot of people and I have a pot of money that people want, right, which can happen in a business, in a political situation, whatever, you better believe that there are going to be people who are going to manipulate that information, and I'll say this, I also know from the other side of that, working with people who are high level executives, and I'm sure some of you have probably met these people. They also have people that control that and can go online and find and get rid of things that, they've said or posted that they're like, no, can we clean this up? Or can you make it the 675th thing that shows up on a search so that nobody actually sees it. Right. And by the way, to me, that also makes me more charitable towards people, because I'll say this, I'm 100% sure I've said some shit I regret. Oh my God. And anybody who has not said stuff that they regret, I guess your friend doesn't regret anything. I forgot what.
Yeah. Our friend Ron Vargas.
Dude, that's awesome. I wish I had that magic power, but I can think of things where I'm like, at that point in my life, I didn't have all the information I needed to make a good statement about that or make a good choice. And, should I go back and do I feel bad about it? Do I regret it? Well, that's where I was. But people, apparently you're supposed to be born perfectly wise and error free now. And
I see that. Like, it always drives me crazy when someone's like getting into politics or something, and then they look at some phrase that was done 40 years ago and said, hey, you said this then, as if like, at that time, at that moment in history, whatever was going on, it was such contextually different. It drives me crazy how
anything you say can and will be used against you.
Yeah.
Yes. In a court of Facebook too.
Bolalong, which doesn't surprise me, chimes in again. I worry more about people not knowing what I'm thinking than knowing it.
Bolalong, you are an enlightened master. See, the reason that you can ask these questions and push back against religious people is because you yourself are enlightened, and that's why you can do it. I'm just so I don't have that level of enlightenment, but that's a good point, right?
I called Bolalong once just to have a discussion with him. Where was the energy coming from? Because I was concerned that maybe it was a reaction to like wanting to fight the Don Quixote battles. And he said, no, Andy, I see the damage it's causing, and I want to be a voice to show that there's an alternative. And if I don't live that voice, then I'm not serving the greater good. And I had a deep respect for him when he shared that in those words. Yeah.
By the way, that reminds me of a story. Do you guys know Ram Dass? You ever heard of Guru Ram Dass? Very famous guy. He just died.
We're all just walking each other home.
Yeah, that guy. One of my favorite anecdotes about him, and something that I feel like, whatever you might think of Ram Dass, this really hit home. He was like, on my shrine, on my meditation shrine, I have a picture of like my gurus and all the people I admire, and I have a picture of Donald Trump, right? And he goes, because in many ways Donald is playing his part and I'm playing my part. And part of my part is to fight back against him. But also at the same time, I realize that he's just playing his part. right? That's a voice in the context and fabric of the universe. And I can just see all sorts of people like, oh my gosh, you're saying, look, evil and various opinions in the world. We're not going to get rid of any of that stuff. It's always going to be there. You're always going to play one role one way or the other. And the idea that there's these fixed roles, that people are one thing, I feel that that's a naive thing. The best you can do is decide on a set of values and go, okay, this is what I'm going to act in the world. And I feel this is my role right now, and hopefully, I mean, for me, one of the reasons I took Buddhist vows, which are really kind of like Buddhist intentions, is to say, whatever I do, I'm going to try them as much as possible not to hurt myself and other people unnecessarily. That's the fundamental core of my ethic. I am not going to accomplish that. I want to be clear. It's not going to happen, but I want to try to do that, because to live any other way for me is very difficult for me. But getting Wolang's point, we need people like him to say the things that he says. We need all these different roles in society. I don't know that we certainly don't need, more evil people. We know people. We certainly have to, and by the way, evil people are people that do evil things.
I know we distinguish. We try to get personal, impersonal, but that's pretty high level for the show.
Yeah. You get the idea, right? So what that's a complex human thing. I am certainly not perfect, nor I don't even know what that means. I'm just a guy trying to get through life the best that I can and do the least damage that I can, right?
You mean Latino?
What's that?
You mean Latino? I'm just
I'm Latino. I have to be Mr. Latino too.
So what I noticed about my behavior over time is that I love social media, and I have no desire to interact with anyone.
Well,
you notice that?
Well, Andy goes for walks and he interacts with people on his walks.
I'm on my walks. I'm chit chatting. I know every dog by their name. I don't know the owners' names because that's not interesting. And basically, I just post the picture on Instagram, which automatically sends the picture to Facebook, so I don't need to do it twice. And I get to share my warped view of the world for anyone who wants to join me in it. And 1 out of every 20 posts, I don't realize that I fucked up until I trigger somebody. So like, I take a post of what I find to be a humorous moment in the Netherlands. There's a group of people in a basket, like six kids that are being pulled in a basket. You can't really see their faces. They're way away, but I take a picture of this situation, which is humorous because there's not many countries in the world where you throw like 8 kids into this basket and then drive them around. And of course, all of a sudden
there's always going to be that one
there's going to be the trigger. And then the trigger is, if that were my kid, I would be pissed off that you posted the picture of my kid online. Me thinking I'm not posting a picture of a kid. Me thinking I'm posting this picture of an amusing situation that only happens in the Netherlands.
Oh, totally. I remember that post, by the way. And I remember I remember all the like, wait, I didn't know I was doing that. Right.
It was exactly that.
Yeah. But how nice you have an intentional way that you use Facebook, right? I mean, that's the point, right? I mean, the fundamental point here, I think, of all this discussion, well, there's lots of points with this one, but it's like, look, just use it intentionally and be okay with whatever the consequences are, and always know there's a continuum of risk. In one, you can say whatever you want, and that's going to have a particular set of consequences. And if you're okay with those consequences, then, bless you, go on your way. And then there's somewhere in the middle, and then there's you go back and forth. I have come to the conclusion, much like you, that I feel there's a way that I can use it, and I'm more comfortable with it now. But there's still moments where I'm like, I'm not going to do that again, or until I forget.
Exactly. Until you're really tired on a night and you press the send button where you're so tired that that's the last thing you need, but it's almost a self-fulfilling prophecy,
And in the morning.
Yeah. So actually, I was reading some research about when we're more likely to post or to make statements like that, and they're morning at night. There's something about the way, I cannot remember exactly what causes that, some biophysical thing that where if there's a particular state that you're in, you're like, oh yeah, I'll post that. I'm very risky right now. I don't care about the consequences. But as the day goes on, certain things in your mind, your body mind start to activate and you become much more risk averse. You're like, oh man, I can't believe it. So it's even like it's temporal, right? It has a time period. Summers, by the way, I'm more likely to post something crazy over the summer than I am during the school year, because during the school year, I'm thinking, oh, I don't have the energy to respond. If I post that, I'm going to have to respond to somebody. But in the summer, I might be like, I've got 3 days. Come at me, bro. You know, whatever. I've got plenty of time to give you a diatribe on here. You know, so there's a part of it as well that is, you know, temporal and contextual, I think.
I also noticed that I don't unfriend people. You know, I don't have really an unfriend. I just pause people, or so I don't see them on my timeline. Because what I noticed is, you said earlier on the show, is that some people just pollute my thoughts.
Yeah.
So when there's no reflection on their own belief, and it just comes from a very strong belief, then I don't hear their statement. I hear the underlying belief that they're not letting people see that they have.
That's
And so I just say, you know what? I see it, but why do I want to let that become kind of more what guides my day, or the influences that I don't control? So I'll just pause those people and then sort of put them in the penalty box for 30 days or something.
I do the same, actually. There are people who I love personally and want to talk to them face to face, but I'm not quite interested in what they're posting online. And so I don't defriend them. I'll just mute them. And you know, that way they don't show up. It's exact. By the way, if you think of Facebook as an extended mind, right? I like that idea, right? Like this is.
Can we get to that? Because you said earlier on the show that you use the term extended mind, and I'd love if you kind of like give us a story of what you mean by that.
Yeah, so like we extend our minds, right? Like as a musician, if I use a metronome, that's my mind extended. I'm not having to internalize tempo or pulse because it's clicking at me. So I am using a tool to take the place of something that I might have to cognitively process. That's a basic understanding of an extended mind, right? So our minds are extended. Our car is an extension of a particular thing we want to do. It's a technology that extends our desire to drive, right? Or to get to a different place. But like social media is an extended social mind, right? It is, you know, where we would have, as Bumbles was saying before, you know, World War II, you're isolated. You know, you're not getting out of your house because your city's getting bombed. You know, you don't have any way of extending your social network outside of these very small groups, right? So we've created an artificial extended mind that takes the place of a lot of things like remembering birthdays, keeping up with your friend that is, you know, now their business is booming, keeping up with that person you met a couple years ago you thought is really interesting and you want on their show, right? And because we have now extended or externalized, if you will, that aspect of our mind to an automated or a network, a digital network, a virtual network, we don't have to process that as much anymore. Facebook will do that for us, but it can also manipulate us because it gets to choose, you know, what we're going to respond to, what's going to give it media, right? So that's what I think about in terms of that extended mind. Now, the other side of that is what you were saying is, if I'm going to be on that space, then let me curate some of that, right? I don't want Facebook to constantly choose what aspect of this mind my attention goes to. Just like I can focus on the fact that I'm going to die one day, which is true, or I can focus on the fact that I'm alive. Both are true, right? I like to have both there, but some days I don't want to think about my death. I want to think about being alive. Some days I want to think about my death. I'm like, hey man, you probably shouldn't eat that today. That's redo your life a little bit, right? So I think this is the same thing. I don't want to hear from that guy today. That's not where my mental state needs to be. So that's kind of the analogy that I draw here.
I like that. Yeah, I noticed that happened with calendaring, all these things that we were doing they became digitized. And then the humor is that we used to use computers and then we would manage them, and now they've come and now they're managing us. So that's the beautiful gift they give in return, is that my calendar now manages me.
Oh yeah. Satan's little helpers, right? They're helping to make that happen. You know, both the little helpers that are creating the software and then the software itself, right? Yeah. That it's a blessing and a curse of modern life, right? I'm so glad that I don't have to, you know, remember some of the things I used to have to remember, like phone numbers. You know, like I'm glad I don't have to remember that anymore. I'm glad that I can just go, you know, call Andy, you know, and Siri remembers. But Siri also remembers how many times I call Andy. sends it to Facebook, and then Facebook shows me more Andy posts, especially if the posts have something to do with the words that they caught in our conversation, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah. Every time Andy says Indiana University or whatever, boom. Oh yeah, man, Andy's my friend. He was at Indiana. You know, it's so, and I'm that's not exactly what happens, of course.
No, but I mean, we know those algorithms are so nuanced that there's things that like I get in my feed and I think to myself, how the hell could they have known that this is something I was looking for? Because I don't remember having done anything A, B, C. So some way they've derived that information somewhere. That is mind-blowing.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's sophisticated and it's bigger than what you can manage all the time, because you know, there's only so much bandwidth that you have in a given day to figure what's going on out. So yeah. Oh man.
Yeah.
Well, that was fun.
Nice to be with you. Thank you for joining us for the hour.
And thanks. I'm really excited you let Bombos talk today. That was a really nice. It was very nice of you.
Well, you shared with me that I had to be conscious of him, so I just heightened my awareness that he's also sitting next to me.
If I really want to talk, I just do this.
You just poke him.
I poke him.
Bumbles, by the way, I'm poking fun at Andy, but I have that same quality. If I have a friend who's a little more like, you know, internalizing, or I might get along with him great. Like actually it builds a nice relationship, but I often have to monitor that I won't talk over them, because I will do it if I'm not conscious of it. I will say that I have learned to pick up those social cues over time, though.
We're working on them.
Yeah. Some days are good. Some days are better than others, you know. The one beautiful thing is that we both embrace who we are. It's just I embrace myself a little bit more sometimes.
Yeah. I'm just a little bit better than Bombos. I just want to make sure we put that out there. Bombos is pretty good, but let me just be clear. I'm a little bit better.
Thank you, Frank. You know, that humor, it would probably not get to everyone, but that was just much appreciated for fully seeing me. It's great to feel fully seen in life. You know,
man, all the good things, all the good things. Well, thanks so much for having me here today, guys. It's fun.
Thank you, Frank.
I don't know if people made comments in the chat or.
Yeah, we've got a lot
of comments.
A lot of comments.
Frank, next time you're live with us, connect a wire to your modem.
A wire? Okay. Did you get some spottiness?
It wasn't that bad, but there were times when I had to imagine what you were saying.
Okay, I will do that. Yeah.
Yeah.
So episode 280, we'll have you back.
Yes. Okay. We have Bolalong says, I really enjoyed Frank Diaz's insight. So that's a lot coming from Bolalong.
Oh man, I feel honored. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Frank. We send you some love. Yeah.
Hey, love to you guys. See you later. All right,
bye-bye.
Frank Diaz.
That was fun.
Yeah.
So, Bambos, today is Tuesday, and we've got another 3 days ahead of us.
Who's counting? Andy, no one understands me with Thomas Hayden.
Oh, no one understands me.
And we've had him also before.
We've had him. You know what? I have not given Thomas the title of the show yet. So he's coming on. He doesn't even know the title of the show. So we're going to I got to kind of warn him, because he might say, what the hell are you talking about? What do you mean nobody understands?
Oh, I love it.
So we might have to have a talk about that. I'll call him up just to make sure we don't have to change the title.
So we're going to do that tomorrow
on A Wonderful Chaos.